Human trafficking is when a person or a group uses force, fraud, or coercion to gain services, labor, or sexual services from another person. And human trafficking is broken down typically into two categories: labor and sex trafficking. But when we're talking about people with intellectual disabilities, there's a third condition we need to consider, which is being forced, frauded, or coerced out of disability benefits. So that can be things like SSID, SNAP cards, or government assisted housing. Human trafficking does not have to involve physical force, and it does not have to involve physically moving a person from place to place. Emotional or psychological coercion is much more common and still meets the criteria for human trafficking. So one of the biggest red flags you'll see is that an individual has new items, new clothes, different kinds of food that they're eating. Things like having new phones or new tablets are always a red flag. If a person is sneaking off with people who are unknown, they have a new boyfriend or a new best friend that they have to check in with often. If there's a big shift in demeanor, suddenly they're very withdrawn, they're very, very secretive, they aren't able to express what's going on in their day-to-day life, or they appear fearful of their new friend or of a certain person, those are huge red flags for trafficking. Also, setting up new accounts, either new bank accounts or new social media accounts, having benefits unattended for, or working very long hours without any pay or benefits to show for it. Those are all red flags. It's important to remember that traffickers can appear in any form. They can be a family member, they can be a provider, a guardian, a trusted community member, male, female, or any age. Not all traffickers are male or strangers. In fact, many survivors of trafficking report that they were groomed by women. Individuals with developmental disabilities often fall through the cracks in our society. The lack of accessibility in our culture makes it really common for people to talk for or on behalf of individuals with disabilities, thus concealing what the reality of a situation is. Because of this lack of accessibility, individuals with developmental disabilities face higher rates of social isolation and sexual and physical abuse. We know that surviving prior sexual or physical abuse and being socially isolated increase the risk of trafficking. Plus, if an individual has impairments in comprehension or judgment, paired with a lack of sexuality education, they may not be able to understand or comprehend what trafficking is and what's occurring in their life. Finally, members of the LGBTQ+ community and those who live with low socioeconomic status are at higher risks for trafficking. So it's really important for DD professionals to acknowledge multiple identities held by individuals with disabilities and to take into account those intersecting identities as they may increase the risks of trafficking. The first reason is because there's this huge myth in popular culture that trafficking equates with being put in chains and moved from dirty motel room to dirty motel room. And in reality, that actually is very rare. What's much more common is being slowly groomed over time and being forced, use fraud or coercion slowly. Like, for example, if someone sends someone they believe is a trusted partner a nude photo, and then that nude photo is used to blackmail an individual into engaging in other sexual acts. Or they're hired for a job in which they're initially paid, but then slowly their wages are reduced over time. Those are the more realistic versions of trafficking, and unfortunately, we aren't conditioned in popular culture to look for those signs. Another reason is because individuals with developmental disabilities aren't taught about what trafficking is. So if something is happening to them, they are unable to report what's occurring in their life. Also, if an individual is socially isolated or they have a highly controlling guardian or advocate in their life that puts them in a position where they are unable to speak for themselves or unable to be alone with other people, it's very hard to pick up on those red flags for DD professionals because we just don't see what's going on. And lastly, for example, if a person is in a relationship or they're engaging in a job and they report that they're very happy, it's very hard to discern if there is some exploitation or trafficking occurring if the person themselves does not report any ill feelings or feelings of being mistreated. So it's really important for DD professionals to take the time to learn more about trafficking so that they can best support their clients. And for more information, they can visit the National Human Trafficking Hotline at humantraffickinghotline.org.